light in numbers. So a big welcome to all of our folk who are watching from home, either now or in the future. We hope this video is something that gets played a lot around the parish, that we share with our family members and friends, just to kind of show what we're hoping to see as we move into our future. But before we begin, let's go ahead and bow our heads in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good and gracious Father, we recognize that in sending your Son amongst us, you began your church. And in this city of Terre Haute, we experience church in this space, in this parish of St. Patrick's. We ask then, as we view these plans for the future of this parish, that we do so guided by your wisdom, that we are constantly looking to do your will on this earth, that in all things we find fulfillment in doing that will. We ask that you be with us as we continue this journey, that this place may be a source of peace and comfort for many, many generations to come, that those who are coming after us may find you here at St. Patrick's. And we ask this in your name. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this was supposed to happen back in March, and that was right when COVID hit, and after talking with Kevin from Entheos, we decided to postpone the meeting at that time. However, we still are kind of in the midst of COVID right now, and we recognize that if we waited too much longer, we'd probably be further to the fall, and we don't really know what that's going to look like. So we wanted to host this now in August, at the end of summertime, before we get into those fall months. A big thank you to our committee, our facilities committee, and our master campus planning committee, who helped to put this plan together. We met for about 6 months, I believe it was, about 6 months, once a month, with Kevin, talking about the needs of the parish, what we're hoping to see. And I would like to say that they were an amazing group to work with, because we had been a lot of different views that were coming together, debating the different things of the parish. And it wasn't just our committees that were involved. Kevin was great about coming in and talking with various groups at the parish, and he's going to speak a little more about that during the presentation, really to get a sense of what does the parish need moving forward. I will say that the final plan, the actual full master campus plan, is not stage one. Okay, that is something that may not happen for many, many years to come, but at least it gives us a trajectory. It gives us kind of an end goal towards which to aim, and the subsequent steps along the way will already start providing some of the needs that were spoken of by these various committees. The hope is that with Kevin doing the presentation, will give us a chance to ask any questions that we have in regards to the master campus plan or the stages therein. Again, this video will be available for future use as well. So for those who are watching at home, if you have any questions and you didn't get them answered, obviously today, feel free to shoot us an email or give us a call, and we'll do our best to answer those questions even into the future. So with that, I invite Kevin to come forward and show us this master campus plan. Thanks.
I think I'll have to take that off or you won't hear me like Father. Thank you for the opportunity to come back and share this. It's, like Father said, been a while since we had met back in, I don't even know when it was. It's up here somewhere. There. Back in October is when we started this process. And we met in November with the parish. We went over what we heard as all the needs. If anybody remembers that and has a copy of what we handed out then. So from December through January, we looked at options with the committee, kind of tested things, and kind of came back around to the final version that we're presenting today as their kind of recommendation as a master plan. And think about, a master plan is a long kind of process, or a long study. It's not going to happen, even though all these needs feel like they are needed right now. It's a 20, a 30, a 50-year plan. So it's more of a guidepost than anything. So we came up with options, and then in February we spent some time working with budgeting, phasing, and then we were supposed to present this in March, and here we are today in August. So as Father said, we thought we better get this done. Beyond this, so this will kind of end our process with you all at the moment, and then at some point you'll go into a capital campaign for a phase one, and we'll talk about it potential phase one at the point, but I don't think there's any, at this point in time, any kind of drive to move straight into any kind of campaign at this with what's going on. So, some of these slides are from the presentation before, just the master plan process of what we went through of defining the project scope, creating a program, trying to understand your needs, then developing the options, and coming back with a recommendation here today. The facilities planning team that I worked with, Father mentioned, these are the folks that were on that group. And certainly, if there are questions beyond today, feel free to reach out to them or Father with further questions. And those, again, this was from last time, but these are all the folks that we talked to, the various ministries in your parish and within the school, to try to understand what your needs are for the future. Yeah. So again, your existing site, this is the church over here in the corner, school back there, just to kind of orient you. You don't always fly over the top of your site very often. So some of the things that we noticed with your site is just you have a lack of parking, which we all know of, and issues with traffic flow through the site with the school for pickup, different things. You have aging buildings, the church, the school. You have residential properties that kind of sit in the middle of your site and divide it. There are 3 houses at the moment, 2 here. This is the art building, and then the 3rd house there, kind of separating your campus throughout the block. Campus security is an issue. Just having with the soup kitchen and the school being very open with the playground, there are issues in how we can make that better was one of the things we needed to look at. And then just conflicts of use between the parish and the school, especially when it comes to a parish hall space, meeting space. You're using the gym and the meeting rooms up in front of the gym for a multitude of things, and the school's trying to use them. So there's always kind of conflicts, and that's the same at any parish. We hear that all the time. So those are the things we kind of noticed, and some of the things we tried to resolve with the master plan. So one more slide. These were the key kind of goals that we had set out when we heard from the program. So if we said we solved these 5 things in a kind of an immediate or need, these were kind of very high priorities, we probably got 80% there. So again, creating accessibility to all your buildings, especially the school, is an issue. Adequate, accessible restrooms, such as this space, getting a restroom in here. Security of the buildings and the campus, increasing the parking, improving the traffic flow, and then probably your biggest issue was a parish hall space, meeting space, because I know it was built as a parish hall. The school kind of uses it for the most part, and it becomes very difficult to use as meeting space, and your other facilities really don't have any meeting space. The rectory has 1 room there that's potentially 1 or 2 rooms to use as meeting space, but other than that, the parish doesn't have any. So those were kind of the key issues that we had. A few other ones, we talked about the soup kitchen being a high priority, that the soup kitchen needed to stay on campus. The committee talked a lot about whether it should stay on campus, be off campus, and they felt it was very important that it stay here. That we do something with the church basement. It's not really used very much right now. The church itself, we felt works pretty well. We don't want to mess with the beauty of the church, and so you'll see we have not done really anything with the church worship space. Creating a better adoration chapel came up. The adoration chapel is in the garage, I'll call it. So a better place for that, a more accessible place for that. Again, we talked about meeting rooms and their need. Talked about offices, that you have enough offices for the parish, but they could probably be combined in a little bit open office areas, doing some things with that. but maintaining those. The school would stay a two-section school, but really needed better organization, better flow throughout, and grouping of classrooms, and maybe some specialty classrooms were needed. Playgrounds, safer, easier to get to, green space available for the playgrounds. Those were kind of a few other things that we tried to solve as we went along. So just kind of maybe reminding folks of the things we heard way back then. So this is what we arrived at, okay? And I'll kind of just walk through site here. Maybe the easiest way is if I can point at this. Kind of walk through this, and then we'll go through the buildings per se. So the church, again, is right down in the corner, and you can see it has stayed, and it's kind of same shape, same layout. This is the drive that now comes in along the church here, and so I guess one of the main things you see is we've created a cross drive between the blocks, between 19th Street and 18th Street. So you'll see there is one house missing there. I don't know if that person's here, but but our understanding is there have been some conversations about that house becoming at some point the parish's property to build over. So we utilize that space. You also see the art trailer is gone. The other two houses are still remaining within there, and you can see again. What I would say is we've worked around them in the master plan. If there is an opportunity there for the parish, I think that would just open up your space, especially for additional parking, to have that entire block, which would be very helpful. So just kind of overall, there's a cross drive through the block, and I'll start over here with the church. This area here, you also see there are a couple buildings missing. One is the rectory that would have been sitting here, current offices, the old rectory. We looked hard at what we could do with that space and could not come up with a really good answer, especially when you have the 1801 building that kind of has the same kind of space, small office spaces. And it seemed to always get in the way when we really talked about a parish hall. So in the big picture, the rectory is gone. You'll also see that the gym, or what was the old gym, is now the middle school wing that kind of sticks out of the school, is also missing. Okay, so I'll come back to all those and how the buildings flow, but just to kind of give you an overall view of that. So a cross drive connecting this way, coming in, this is the same entry that the school uses over off 18th Street. But just in general, allowing flow to come in, circulate around, park. So this would be school parking. This could also be school parking outside of the day, or it could be church parking. Kind of thinking this is probably church staff parking, church parking as well on a daily basis. So if you see in there, and I know it's hard to read, we've also have that labeled as playground. So the idea is that maybe in the morning, school traffic can flow through the site and back out, or flow around and back out. And I'll come to this, but this is now the new entry to the school here. So students might be dropped off in the mornings, picked up in the afternoons, but during the day, this could be locked off, this could be locked off, and that hard surface playground could connect with I'll say a greener surface playground for the school, but still let traffic for the school come in and circulate around and go back out, and church traffic to work through this drive, okay? So just in general, that's how the site kind of flows. You'll see up here, with all your parking kind of geared towards the back of the church, which it is right now as well, we've created an entry, I'll say the main entry to the church here, and you'll see in the three-dimensional photos, we've got a drop-off point there, a covered drop-off point, to actually enter this, I'll say a larger, wider corridor that could also serve as a gathering space. It's one of the things that you don't have right now is really a space to meet, to talk. And most of the time you would say, well, that's where the gathering space is. Unfortunately, the way this is built to the street, you're not going to fit it there. So it's a way of getting folks in the building, down, and the potential to be able to come around, wrap around, and come back into the space at the front. So the way we've looked at this is that your current narthex here might be opened up a bit. We open up the windows, and it also serves as a bit of a cry area for fussy kids, utilizing the windows that are there, as well as a way of entering the church by coming back around. So all of this is wrapping around. You'll see the part in here, a courtyard. You have kind of a courtyard right now between the old rectory and the church. So it's kind of an extension. I think it's a little bit bigger, but a space that could then flow out from, this is a new parish hall that would seat 200. So the idea that there would be a lot of glass along this corridor, there may be events in there that could also utilize the courtyard space along the corridor, but really letting that serve as both gathering, parish, community space next to the church. And then up in here, and again, hard to see, but I'll get back to the plan, there's restrooms, there's a chapel, there's meeting spaces. This is the 1801 building. So the thought is that all the parish offices would now move to the 1801 building, utilizing that really as your office, parish office space, but still connected to the church, to the parish hall. So all of this is connected where you see the yellow corridors. Okay? And then connected to the parish hall is the soup kitchen, a new soup kitchen that really works off of 18th Street. So the entry for that is out here, coming into a seating area. The actual kitchen for the soup kitchen, storage. So if you say that, there's a dividing line right there. That half's the soup kitchen. This is the kitchen for the parish hall, storage for the parish hall. So separated, but still connected to a certain degree as almost a back way out, a way to get there, but not for the patrons of that. They would all stay off of 18th Street. That's kind of in general how this works. If we come over to the school, like I mentioned, there are several additions to this school that might be a little bit hard to decipher here, but I'll start here as the main entry. So this is all new administrative space, the blue area right here. So again, the idea that this becomes the main entrance for the school in that corner, and we've infilled in between your existing original school. This is the cafeteria addition here, and then the gym right now is essentially where those two spaces are. So you can see we've added a corridor along the front that connects a new entry to the gym as well. So this could be used during the evening, during the weekends, with the idea that it could be separated from the rest of the school. You don't have access through the rest of the school. Also allows folks and students coming to the gym that they're not walking through the cafeteria space. So you can see there's another corridor here, and we've kind of separated the kitchen, cafeteria, which are the existing areas, with a corridor. So now this really isn't being used to get to the gym like it is now, which was an issue with the school. So again, the gym stays here, the stage, thinking of moving music around to the front, and these really become classrooms for the school. So again, Parish would not be using that building unless there was a really big event that used the gym for some reason. The cafeteria, kitchen area, and then this addition back here is preschool. Again, from a site point of view, thinking that preschool might enter off of Oak Street, I think back there. That this might become the preschool drop-off, entering here, and these three classrooms would be kind of a small children kind of wing, separating them from the rest of the students. And then you'll notice one other area I think it's about right here, is the dividing line. This is the existing school, and then this is an addition to that school, 3 levels. And you'll get a better understanding of that when I show you the floor plans here. So just in general, that makes sense how the site is working. Make sure everybody kind of gets their bearings. We did keep a playground out here on the corner, you'll see in the drawings. So that's kind of overall how the site is working. There we go. So kind of zoom into the parish side of things a little bit closer. Kind of talk through all this, but again, you'll see church is the same, the idea of entering into a gathering space from here or entering from the front off of Poplar Street, that there would be an entrance as well here, and allowing that to wrap around for folks to come in. There is a connection back here at these doors where there currently is a door. But the idea is that folks are kind of coming in the main entrance on the front. Thinking about an adoration chapel right here next to the church. Restrooms, men's and women's, that could serve both parish hall and church functions. And then kind of a meeting room suite, if you want to call it, but there's 2 meeting rooms and what we're calling a hospitality room. We'll call it a parlor. I'll say more soft seating that could be used for receptions, different things like that, but could also be used for meetings. So thinking there, we have 3 meeting rooms. We could divide the parish hall into a couple more to get you 5. We've got a couple conference rooms within the 1801 to get us to that 6 to 8 meeting room kind of spaces, which is what we had asked for, and trying to share those spaces so you're not just having meeting rooms sitting there. Again, the soup kitchen, 65 seats that really work off of 18th Street. I think, if I remember right, it was like 16 seats are in there now. Is that correct? Something like that. So 65 was the goal at the end of all this, to have 65 seats. The idea that the soup kitchen here, their storage, their office. So again, that kind of block all working that way with, I'll say, a back door. And the potential for the other, keeping both kitchens together, so the parish hall kitchen and the soup kitchen are, in the same area. They're not connected. But there might be times if you had a big event that, you might need to use the other side of that for some reason. Chair storage, mechanical space, and a 200 seats in a parish hall. In the offices, again, we're moving the offices from the rectory over there, your parish offices. The deanery offices will also stay there, but Catholic Charities will be moving off campus. They're already out there? Okay. So that was the other reason of really looking at that space, knowing that they were going to move out there. There was a lot of space in there, and there actually is still even more space beyond what you need in that building. So, point of all that is connecting all of those things. This is all on the same level, so it's all on grade. It's all accessible, other than the upper and lower floors of 1801, but I don't know if you've fixed the elevator or not yet. Okay, so we have an elevator within that building to get back and forth. So in general, that's how the parish side works. The school, again, this is what I would call the main level, call it the ground level or the basement in the old building, if that makes sense. So again, the idea of, I'll start in here, reusing in the old building those classrooms, teacher's lounge, Title I, and a lot of your kind of general use classrooms coming there. So this is library space, art classroom, computer lab, restrooms. So one of the things on every floor of the school you'll see is this same set of restrooms. So there is a new set of restrooms on every floor of the building. And on the other end, you'll also see a teacher workroom in that area on every floor of the building. So trying to provide space for both of those to occur, which are missing right now, really, in the school. When we looked at that, you actually had enough space for classrooms, and the classrooms that you have are actually of a decent size. So we couldn't find a reason not to reuse that building. We did, just while I'm thinking of it, we did have a masonry study look at that building as part of the master plan, just knowing that it's been leaking. There are some issues with that. In the short, that building is built like a tank. It's there and it's going to stay, and there isn't, we couldn't find a reason to say you ought to tear that down, you ought to build something new. The classrooms are the right size. It just needs some loving care at the moment. So, or a lot of loving care, I guess. When you see the budget numbers, you'll see a lot of loving care, but not as much as what a new building would take. So again, the idea that these are a little bit more specialized, like I mentioned, computer lab, art, library on that lower basement floor. Also, I mentioned removing what was the old gym, now the middle school classrooms. By doing that, we're still showing the stairs in there, but those could go away. That could be leveled off to eliminate that other set of stairs, okay? So that would allow that to be basically connected as a floor. Again, the cafeteria stays as it is, preschool cafeteria. The kitchen right now kind of comes over into here, so we've added a little bit of space to it and pushed it back and allowing, this is really where, right now where the kind of hallway is that you walk by the kitchen. So really treating that more as a hallway to get between the cafeteria and out. So you're not, so you're actually, kids are coming in, they're walking by the kitchen into the cafeteria kind of thing. So there's a little bit more flow that's not being used by everybody else. Right now that's the only way to the gym. So the idea is this other larger corridor could connect along the front and allow ways to get to band, to music, and the gym without having to walk through the other classrooms. Okay? I mentioned the idea of a preschool addition, so your 3 preschool classrooms. So this is new space out beyond the back side of the cafeteria, and the idea that that could enter off of Oak Street. So preschool really works here, they're right next to their cafeteria, and really don't have to go anywhere else. So kind of keeping them separate from the older kids. Pulling music and band off I'll say your so-called stage with the short ceiling. The idea of moving them, really creating 2 rooms here where you have PLC 1 and 2 permanent rooms that are music and band. And again, the entrance coming in to the gym. And the idea of getting rid of that second level above the stage so that we could open that up to a proper height for a stage. Okay? Maintaining the gym. Yeah. So if I go up a level, so you saw mostly in this area, mostly general computer lab, library, everybody's kind of using those spaces. If I go to what we're calling level 1, but you would say that's the second floor above the cafeteria. And then this is kind of if you walked in the door and went up the stairs, it's that level, okay? So this really becomes, in this building above the cafeteria, your kindergarten, first grade. And we looked at these as, what we heard from the teachers is those 4 classrooms or 2 classrooms, they teach in pods, I'll say it. So kindergarten and first are together, second and third are together, fourth and fifth are together, and then sixth, seventh, and eighth, okay? So keeping those together was very important to them. So those 4 classrooms really become kindergarten and first grade classrooms above the cafeteria. So that's existing building. This area is infilled, connecting those buildings. And I forgot to mention before, right there is the elevator that would connect all levels of this building as well as all levels of this building. So it's a 2-sided elevator. This side stops on the half floor, this side stops on the other half floor. So that was the one place that we could find that we could serve all of the school with one elevator. The idea of workroom, and then this really becomes all middle school classrooms. So all the middle school kids are on this level, math, science, this is the science lab, the science classroom, religion, English, literature, social studies, so all of their needs on here. Again, I mentioned the idea of a restroom here, workroom for the teachers. And then if we go up one more level, so this is the top level of what is the old building right there. And the addition to that, this is the second, third, fourth, and fifth grade classrooms. So again, two classrooms for each grade, restrooms, new restrooms, and workroom for the teacher, the elevator coming up to that level. So that's kind of how the school lays out. And this might be what things start to look like. So you can see the church from the outside, leaving the church very much alone. This kind of connecting corridor, again with a lot of glass coming over to the idea of maybe the Adoration Chapel here that has a presence to Poplar Street. And then this is really restrooms, that's why you're not seeing any windows, but again connecting over to the 1801 building. You can see the parish hall, soup kitchen beyond that. We'll come around them in a little bit. School back here, so that's the original school. This is the addition, kind of pushing this way, and the entry back there. From the other side, again, the idea of coming through. Here's kind of that drop-off going into the corridor between the parish hall and the church. Soup kitchen entry out here. And then the way the school would wrap around with a new entrance connected with the gym, playground here, playground over on the other corner, but you can kind of see how the parking might work. And again, letting that be playground, hard surface playground during the day. So the idea of gating that off at each end. Oops. So the cars kind of flow at each side, keeping again the church and the school separate. Coming across there, you can see again, that's that playground I was just talking about, church entry, parking again, staff, daily church use, might be some school staff parking there. Again, parking is limited on the site. That's why I say, having the space of those other two houses would be beneficial, or anywhere around the site. From the ground, so again, the church, you can see the idea of a chapel over here next to it, and an entry that goes into that corridor as well here in between the buildings. Oops. Soup kitchen that might have a little bit kind of a diner feel to it from the outside, but again facing off of 18th Street here, so this really becomes the entrance. Looking down, I'll say that when I talk about that corridor between what would be maybe the parish hall and outside courtyard space, so kind of the idea of a wide corridor with a lot of glass to both sides, kind of connecting those two spaces into one. Again, the idea of the courtyard, so this is the church over here, and that corridor, but letting that flow out to have seating out there, various things. And the idea of a parish hall might have a raised ceiling, so again, that's the drop-off point you saw out there coming in. A lot of glass down the corridor. Probably that end of the building is I'll say the presentation end. The kitchen would be on this side over here. So, and again, the idea of connecting glass across that out to that courtyard from the parish hall. Front of the school, again, the new administrative entrance to the school, entrance to the gym, but again connected with a lot of glass. You kind of see where you need to go in, but it could be separated so you could operate that by itself without having access to the rest of the school. And from down the grade there. And back on the back corner, this is 19th and Oak. Again, the idea of a new entrance for preschool to come in, preschool classrooms, and really kind of their separate playground out here that's fenced in on the corner. It's the same kind of look there, but utilizing that as a drop-off, kind of getting some of that traffic out from coming into the school area. Yeah. So that's kind of the master plan. Hopefully that makes some sense, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But so where do you start on something like this? So as we talked about this with the committee, we came back to this is a potential phase one. you kind of use all your spaces, so you really have to almost create some new space to be able to move anything out, okay? And trying to solve some of the most pressing needs, okay? So maybe not to their full extent, but at least making progress. So what currently is maybe an initial phase is the idea of, if you look at this, this is the 1801 building, this is the rectory offices, church down here. The idea of building a standalone soup kitchen / parish hall space. So let's call it that. So if you look in the master plan, we'll come back to it, but that square eventually becomes all soup kitchen. So the idea of building a new building that would kind of give you half of what you need on each side. So the soup kitchen could seat about 30, 35 people, so doubling their space right now. A kitchen in there as well as a parish kitchen here, and a small parish, what I'll call parish hall space that might seat 75, 80 people. So we're kind of getting halfway there for a parish hall and halfway there for a soup kitchen, but would relieve a lot of what you have going on right now. You know, start to grow in that direction. Storage, kind of a separate entrance here. So that would get that entrance working off the front for the soup kitchen, things like that. The other part would be to get the offices moved over to the 1801 building. So really we're trying to empty that space. You may use that for meetings, you may use that for some other purposes, but you know, the first step would be to get this area cleared out, get some things pushed to the outside. So this does, just if you're thinking about that question, this house is the one that we show eventually to be demolished, but right now we're building on what is your property. So we're building right up to the property line, which that would take some conversation with the city, but just thinking through, this is all built on what you currently own. Besides the alley, we'd have to shift a few things over in the alley. Again, the offices, just a little closer look. So we've got the deanery offices down at the far end on the first floor. This is really conference workroom, parish secretary space, entry. The upper level is pastors, bookkeeper, religious ed, and open offices that are shared for a number of staff that are kind of not there every day. So that's the top floor. Basement then is mostly storage. We're showing the quilting room down there, a conference room, leaving the kitchen. And you can see these kind of 3 white spaces are really unused, so there's still a space available there for other things. So that was kind of pushing the office out, getting kind of expanding the soup kitchen, getting some parish hall meeting space here. So for size-wise, that space, if I remember right, was about the same size as like PLC 1. So the size you're using over at the gym, that space here is about that, maybe a little bit bigger. Okay, so it's kind of just getting it separated so it's purely for parish use. And then thinking about the church, we talked about doing a couple things. One is kind of a little bit of renovation in the narthex, but we're keeping the reconciliation, but the idea of the corner entry, turning that into a restroom. And that may be a long-term restroom, that may be just a temporary restroom. That's one of the issues with this building, is not having a space other than to go downstairs. So this would be a single toilet accessible restroom in what would be that entry back there. Okay. So that was trying to solve a little bit of the church's needs. And then it's probably on the next page here. Let me skip ahead. This will tell you a little bit more. The fourth component of that was dealing with the major, most pressing school masonry issues over in the original building. So that was kind of what we had outlined as a phase 1, and trying to solve some of the most pressing needs, and a little bit kind of spread out for everybody to a certain degree. If we look at budget-wise, for a phase 1 budget, again, there's site work. They call it the garage demolition, but the Adoration Chapel, because that would be where that new building would be built. A little bit of money in there. New construction of close to $1 million for the soup kitchen Parish Hall building. Renovation in the church. Again, that kind of narthex restroom space up there. Some renovation in the 1801 building. That was probably the biggest question of, that's a lot of money to spend in a building that we recently had done work in. And I think there was a lot of feelings that it could probably just be moved into for the most part. You know, there might be a few things. So that may be money not spent in a phase one. But when we look at these numbers, the numbers that we came up with were based on a square foot number to say, you know, and this was probably applying like $20 a square foot, which really just gets you new paint, new carpet, you know, that kind of a thing. So the exterior masonry repairs for the school, about close to $250,000. And those were the pressing part of the school repairs. There was probably another, I think there's another 300. It was right about $500,000 just in masonry repairs. Contingency, just because this is a master plan, but you can see there's about $1.8 million. Construction costs, soft costs, which are surveys, abatement, AE fees, furnishings, again about 200, and then scope contingency. So, you know, $2 million to a $2.3 million phase one to try and begin to alleviate some of those most pressing needs. Okay. So we come back to thinking about how that's spread out. This one we talked about, and those are the kind of same numbers of the soup kitchen, 1801, the church, the masonry repairs. So that's kind of the phase one. And then as you think about phasing beyond that, there's kind of not a right answer. You can kind of pick and choose, but there are certain things that have to move before the other ones. So we kind of looked at the second part of this probably would be to get rid of the rectory and think about that new parish hall space. So that would be kind of all of this, about a $3 to $3.5 million project. And with moving this out of here, you can then see that building that was soup kitchen, parish hall, so that square we had before, a little bit of renovation in there, but letting then that all become soup kitchen. Okay, so that's the idea of building that there, not trying to, you know, demolish it, do something with it in the future, other than just kind of renovate it and move the next thing down to here with the parish hall. The church, again, depending upon what you do, you know, there's again a square foot cost. A lot of this is fine, but there may be some things. We know definitely in the basement there's renovation work that needs to be done. So again, you may or may not use that kind of money. We talked about the sound system in here. You know, there's a $100,000 question probably. So there are things to be done in here. But really kind of saying this is probably the next step to get things kind of fully separated, unless the school starts exploding in their capacity or their need for capacity. When we get over to the school, the issue with the school is they use all of their spaces right now. So, you know, you can't say I'm going to go in and renovate this space because I've got no place for the kids to go, you know, to keep school going. So there's kind of three different ways. You know, this is that new classroom addition, which would give them more classroom space so that you could push kids out to there to be able to get into some of these other buildings. Again, the same thing with the preschool back here. Just gives them more classroom space to allow renovation to occur in the existing spaces. And then even band and music, bringing them around. You know, again, none of that can happen till the church gets out of there to be able to take those classrooms. And then again, the rest of this you know, once you can open up some of those, there may be some gym renovation. I think we talked about a new floor is needed in there at some point. Cafeteria and the second floor classrooms, that renovation. And then again, coming back to the rest of the masonry repairs and renovation of those 3 floors of classrooms within that old original building. And then the addition that kind of flows all in through there of the school administrative space, the elevator, those pieces. So And then the general kind of parking, you can still see that house still is here. Again, that kind of restructuring of all that parking area could occur. So this, once you get kind of past those first couple areas, then these can happen as they're needed for the most part. And that's then, again, coming back to the master plan, you can see how that kind of kind of works there and fills in how we got to this. If you look at future budgeting, again, scary numbers. You'd have to say at this point there's probably a $12 to $15 million project if you did everything. But again, you've got $2.5 million in contingency just because we're where we're at. So again, those numbers don't mean a whole lot at this point in time. They're there to kind of give you an idea, but any of this would be really less than trying to build something new at another site. So that is where we got to in the kind of the committee's recommendation. Hopefully that makes some sense. And what kind of questions does that all bring up?
One of the first things that in phase one was to demolish the garage, aka chapel. I didn't see where that was relocated to.
And I'm trying to, I think when we talked about that, we talked about either it coming into a space over here, or potentially, depending upon where it is, it might come back into one of these spaces in the rectory until that building is demolished. Because that building the rectory building doesn't need to be demolished until you're ready to build that new parish hall. So it's going to kind of be a interim catch-all space. So I think that was kind of the first answer of, you demolish that, it could move into a space here for a good long time, and then eventually come out of that space. It may go into here for a time being. Again, it was, but that would be at a point where you're building that chapel space. So that would be a short-term fix. That makes sense?
For Sunday masses and the whole scheme of things, would parking spots within the school area be allowed for Sunday weekend liturgies?
Yeah.
Or is it just that drive-through?
No. So yeah, during weekends, evenings, get to that master plan here.
The whole campus is available.
Yeah. So the idea is really only during the day you might gate those off to serve playgrounds. The rest of the time those would be open, and all of this could be used for parking. And flow. So yeah, definitely the weekends they would be open for parking for
And I
mass.
have another question. I think ultimately, when it's totally finished, there was going to be seating for 65 in the soup kitchen. I'm assuming you got that number from Linnea or something.
Yeah.
Because right now I think we're serving lots more than that.
Yeah, you have seating I think for 16, but you serve like how many? 100 and
160 or.
yeah, in an hour every day.
But would there be a possibility to use part of that parish hall that's not being used Monday through Friday?
I think that would take some conversation. It's probably not an ideal case, of just trying to keep things separated there. But again, I think that's a conversation you would all have to have, within the parish.
I know that during the soup kitchen, we are potentially serving 150 to 160 meals, but there's also multiple, so it's not that there's 150 people coming into some of those are taking multiple meals out to
It's a combination of both people coming in, meals that are just being picked up, that kind of thing, yeah.
I know that during the meetings, there brought up, some people were concerned about security and mixing the soup kitchen clientele directly over, into the parish life center, Steve, especially since he's around here every day, is involved with some security things.
Yeah.
You know, connected to, so we could utilize the same building space that we had in the center. And wasn't there sort of a gathering spot we talked about, or like a green spot beside it, or something more just standing out on the sidewalk? I mean, being respectful for people waiting for the soup kitchen to talk kind of like that, sort of space.
Yeah, we talked about an outside space here, somewhat protected from the weather, but Lene also said she didn't really want to provide cover or even tables out there because that attracted bad things, put it that way. But the idea, and from a security point of view, probably didn't sound very well, but the idea of maybe a bit of fencing barrier right there, greenery to kind of separate what might be happening out here to, again, see what a Steve's issue is, the school and kids out here playing, and, you know, how do we keep that a little bit separate? You can do that to a certain degree, but, you know, you can't solve everything when you got everything right on the same campus there. So,
What does this gain us in parking spaces compared to what we have now to this? How many more are we gaining?
I knew somebody would ask that. I don't think we were gaining any. I think we were maintaining at the best, is what I would say. And I'd have to come back to you for that, but I would say right now, we certainly weren't gaining spaces. Yeah. And that was kind of the fact that you only have so much site, you know, with what you're trying to put on there. And so that's why I think, you know, again, I don't know if they're here either, but, you know, ideally that, you know, that would be a goal, and the committee knows that. You know, they're just, that would be ideal parking to be able to do, you know, allow all of that to function as one kind of parking area. So, or even, you know, like I mentioned before, even, again, these are all houses, but parishes do buy things across the street too for parking. So, yeah, that was probably one of the unfortunate things is we couldn't solve the increase in parking. Hopefully we tried to make the flow better and the separation, but we couldn't increase parking spaces.
I have a question. So we talked about in the first phase putting the restroom back here.
Uh-huh.
And so when we move into actually having the restroom in the chapel, does that still stay like that there, or we?
I think that's something we probably would talk about in the future. And I only say that because, you know, originally we said reconciliation, which is over here now, would move to the other side. And then we started talking about the restroom. What I would see is that restroom is very close. And when you think about elderly folks and just being able to go right out there versus they would have to come out here and go down there. That's a pretty long way. So in some ways, I almost see that staying there and we find another place for reconciliation. It just seems to make a lot of sense when you're talking about having to traverse down the hallway that far. Up here, yeah. I think we left in the sacristy.
Yes.
If you want to call it sacristy. Yeah, we really didn't do much in there. You know, again, Father said, yeah, for the most part, the church works fine, and yeah, there's some storage things, that kind of stuff we could work on, but we didn't really look at changing much in here.
And the final master plan, the Adoration Chapel is just inside the front doors on Poplar.
Right here?
And you access the chapel from the interior hallway.
Yeah. So,
We
yeah.
have to leave that part of the campus open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I think we would, again, it's one of those things we could talk about if either that occurs or how do you do it now? Do you have cards? You got a card reader?
Well, when it was open, we just walked in.
Okay.
But it didn't access the whole church and all the.
Yeah, yeah. I think what I would really probably look at there is one, you could do, there's two answers to that. One, you could do some kind of direct access to get in there, but you don't have access to a restroom. So when you think about that, you need access to that corridor to do that. I would really think about, you know, either card access or key code access or those kinds of things that would allow It's not only just standing open, you have to know at least something to get into that space, and that should be your own parishioners that you weren't going to cause havoc throughout the rest of the space. But yeah, that's how that works. It is from the inside to get restroom access and those kinds of things. And the idea that you could get there from here, or you could get even there, to be able to come in this way and walk down the corridor to that space too. It could be potentially, we could look at something. You could have, yeah, you could do that.
What did you say the capacity was for the new parish hall?
200 for the parish hall, 200 seats at tables.
Okay.
Chairs and tables. So if you were just doing chairs, you could potentially be much bigger. Yeah. And that's also you can see round tables, which in the committee we talked about that too. If you use banquet tables, you'll get probably another at least 25% in there. You might be getting close to 300 if you really, pack them in with banquet tables. So.
Yeah, this looks really nice. It's a good objective to kind of look forward. Phase one, I had a question about. So we had a group of seniors out of Rose Home about 15 years ago did a study of the school, and one of the things they identified is the school was already decades late on having ADA accessibility throughout that facility. I couldn't tell whether we had an elevator already in at this point, or is phase one still not addressing ADA access?
Phase one would not address that. Yeah. Again, I would say it's not shown that way right now. This phase one was really trying to address the masonry issues that are causing it. Now, I would say, that elevator is sitting right in that area. There isn't anything to say that couldn't be some kind of addition there. We showed it with that administrative addition, but realistically, it's filling what is outside space and taking some space out of this classroom. The question would be, can we live without that classroom? So it could be potentially added before that. Yeah.
On the parish hall, yeah, that looks really nice. The two rooms that butt up to that on the other side, is that, I don't know what's the typical size for a parish hall, but are those two,
These?
yeah,
These? That could be 3?
yeah, the meeting rooms, is that something where it could be opened to expand if it was ever a need for a bigger?
Oh, you did? It could. That's not the way it's thought of. These rooms are thought of as separate rooms. Other than maybe that, that one potentially could be expanded to create twice that room. These rooms, I think, were set up for 20 meetings of 20 is what they're sized on. The parish hall, actually the thought was that it could be divided across the middle and across this way, so that you don't always need a space, even on a if you were using that as a kind of a gathering space on Sunday, you don't need a 200 seat space. We've had parishes before that kind of leave like a third or half of their hall kind of walled off for the most part, using those rooms, and then expand that when they need it, to have the bigger space, the 200 seat space. So it's kind of the same idea, but not the way you were thinking about it. It's within this space. I will also say those kind of temporary walls are very, very expensive. So I always caution folks to say, don't just put them in because you think you might need them. It's way, way cheaper to put a permanent wall in there. So make sure you're going to use them for that purpose. A lot of times they just kind of sit there and they're too much of a hassle to close all the time. They're, all of those kinds of things. So.
Well, I think we're rethinking those two little rooms and be like right now, like a parish life center, where you have a all society, small group meeting, or a Girl Scout meeting, or a Cub Scout meeting, or something where we use that smaller space.
Yeah, any of those three could be. And then you have even those smaller spaces within the 1801. There's a large conference room as well as a small conference room in there that the thought is that, night meetings could use those as well. They're not just for office use. Any other questions?
So what's the next step?
Get over COVID first, I think. But
We'll see in a couple of years.
the next step would be to think about a capital campaign for a phase one. And I know that was originally Father's thought is, at the end of this would be kind of a combination thing of kicking off a capital campaign to a certain degree. There's a couple other steps that have to happen with the Archdiocese, but that's really the next step, other than Father will probably want to come back, revisit this. This is your first time seeing this. Does the parish in the bigger picture agree with that direction? This is kind of a recommendation from the committee after looking at it, that as a long-term look at your facilities here, does it make sense? So there may be some conversation like that to occur. But then, thinking about a phase one campaign and where you go from there,
Is there ever any chance of retaining the park category from the school?
That was brought up. There's been several conversations. I doubt the park, and only because I would assume your neighbors would have a fit about that. They probably will have a fit about what you're trying to do here. But to take away a public park, that usually doesn't go over well. Now I don't know. Father at one time mentioned, and maybe something more has happened with the school across the street. I don't know if anybody on the committee knows anything more about that, but there was some talk that school may be potentially closing, and that may change everything,
I think it's because of all that discussion about the public elementary schools and the having to consolidate maybe some, they looked at some that had low attendance, and I think Davis Park was one.
I think that was on a list somewhere, but again, that's, who knows when, But, even that, there's a parking lot there, and there's a whole school there. But again, that's a whole different animal, so.
Yeah, just one more question. It looks like, even though we've got room to grow in the church, it looked like the school, there's not really a projected growth of the school. This is simply addressing the current need. Is that kind of what
To a certain degree. I mean, you are a two-section school right now, and talking with them, they said that's where we would maintain. We're not looking to be a three-section school. So it's more of a reorganization, trying to give full classrooms to some of those areas that don't maybe quite have the full-size classroom, but it's really more reorganizing the spaces, trying to make them work a little bit better. And a lot of what you saw, if we say that whole addition right there is really because that addition right there went away. So it's, it's kind of, I'm just trading spaces to a new and better space. Even with preschool, it was pulling them out of some spaces that they don't really have a functional space to use. So yeah, it was more of kind of reorganizing it and trying to make it flow better. Yeah, and then just money spent to bring things up to snuff a little bit better. Any other questions? I'm sure our time is done here, so if there is anything, these are the same boards you saw up here. If anybody wants to look at them a little closer, and I know all this will be out here at the parish at some point, just kind of as a constant reminder. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate it. And what was that? No. I have a whole bunch of copies. Father, I think, is going to just set copies of that out there for parishioners to pick up if they want. It was just...
Most anything we're supposed to take out of here anyway, it's paper.
Yeah, no, it was take those home so you have something to look at and think about.
Yeah,
So.
nice job, though. I'm excited.
Good. Thanks a lot.